Good morning, everyone. We're going to be doing a little tutorial today about pencil and pencil drawing. So I'm going to be working with you and you'll be able to see in an overhead shot what I'm doing. I'm going to be discussing some of the materials that I use when I'm drawing and then how to improvise when you don't have those materials and find things around the house that you'd like to use. Drawing itself takes a lot of practice. So there's practice in learning how to duplicate a shape, learning how to work with proportions of things. So if you've ever drawn a face, you learn where the proportions go, things like that. But before you do all of that, you should learn a little something about the materials that you're going to be working with, as well as techniques. So today we're going to be talking about shading techniques and blending techniques. I'd love for you to practice this exercise and then we hope to build on that over the next few days. So in order to do that, we're going to switch the camera so that it's an overhead shot of what I'm working on, and then you will be able to work on those things too, okay? So I'm going to be discussing materials as I'm going, and we will hope that you can collect those materials at home. So the first thing you want to have before we start is you want to have a smooth paper. If all you have right now is printer paper, you can use that, or a smoother paper like a Bristol type paper is perfect. The brand of Bristol that I use is called Canson. I don't have any of that right now, so I'm going to be using my journaling book, which is a little more like a sketch type of paper, so it's a little bit rougher. If you have Bristol, great. If you don't, and you just have paper from a printer, etc., use that. And then we want to find some pencils, and I'm going to be talking to you about different types of pencils and what we use them for. But in the meantime, go find some pencils and a ruler and another piece of paper, a little bit of tape, a pair of scissors, and an eraser. So I think that's everything that you'll need. Otherwise, if there's anything else on the way along, you can give it a pause. But I'll be talking about what we're going to use all of those things for, and then we're going to do a little exercise. So let's get started. So as you can see, I have my sketchbook set up and I have the camera set up so that you can see exactly what I'm working on. I'm going to start with my ruler, and we're going to talk for a minute about pencils. So this is a Studio Graphite pencil, this one right here, and it's an HB. So every pencil that you'll ever pick up, you will see HB, or you'll see 2H, 3H, 4H, 5H and up, or you will see B. I think I have one here, maybe that's a B. So this one right here is a B. You'll see B, or you'll see 2B, 3B, 4B, 5B, 6B, 7B, up all the way up to 8. So what does that mean? So ideally for the type of drawing, here's a 6B right here. I don't know if you can see it, it's a little bit worn off, but that's a 6B. What it means is HB is right in the middle, and then as you do the H numbers, so you're going up 2H, 3H, 4H, the harder the lead is in the pencil, so the harder the graphite is. So that gives you really sharp, crisp lines, better for writing, printing, things like that. But then as you go into the B's, the higher the number, 2B, 3B, 4B, 5B, 6B, 7B, 8B, the higher you get into the numbers, the softer it is. And these are the ones that are better for blending, they're better for shading, things like that. So in going through my pencils, I will assume all of you will be able to find an HB or a 2B. So what I'd like you to find is a number that's the highest B you can. So if the highest B you can find is an HB, that's okay. But if you can find a 2B or a 3B, something like that, that's even better. I'm going to work today with a B, which is pretty close to an HB, and I'll work with the HB, and I'm going to work a little bit with the 6B. Then you'll also want an eraser. Now, what kind of an eraser should you have? Well, when we're working on paper, a pink eraser such as this, or some of the fun colored ones that you have, they will actually leave color behind on the page. When you go to erase something, you could end up leaving color behind, but a white eraser won't. So preferably, we'd like a white eraser. So we're gonna use that. The other thing we want to use, and this is one I've made myself because I don't have any currently at home, is something called a tortillon. So what is a tortillon? A tortillon is also known as a blending stick, is paper that's very tightly wound that we use, instead of our finger for blending, we use that and we blend like this. So we will blend like that. So I'm going to assume that most of you don't have a tortillion at home. You can buy them online. You can buy them at an art store or paper supply store. But let's assume that we all can't go out today because we probably can't. And I'm going to make one with you. So this is just a piece of printer paper. What I want you to do is just roll the edge a little bit. Get that edge rolling just a little bit. We're gonna roll that edge till we can get it really, really tight. So once we can get that really, really tight in a roll, we're gonna roll up this paper. It may take a minute to get that going, okay? So just roll that edge like that, and then we're gonna roll this really tight as we can possibly roll it. So kids, you may need some help from parents on this. There is a part where we're gonna use scissors, so just parents, if you aren't comfortable with your child using scissors, you can maybe help them with this. And because we want this rolled as tightly as possible, small hands may not be able to do that, larger hands may need to help. So we're gonna roll this up. So we're just gonna keep rolling, 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 as tight as we can. We're gonna keep it as tight. So however that works for you, whether it's in the air or on the flat surface of the table. And we're just gonna keep rolling that, okay? So that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna keep rolling. And then I'm gonna take a pair of scissors once I get it rolled up. Get it rolled, nice and rolled up here. Okay, so once I have it rolled up, I'll just take a small piece of tape and I'm going to tape it so that it doesn't come loose again, okay? So just put a piece of tape right around the center like that. Okay, well this little bit where we started rolling, as you can see, that's soft. We don't want soft. So you want to feel up to where it starts to get quite hard in your roll, and then have an adult, or if you are an adult, you can do it yourself, but have someone cut it on an angle like that, okay? So now we have a nice angled piece that we're going to use for our shading. So that's how you make a tortillion when you don't have the ability to go out to the store to get one. So now that we have our tortillion for shading, we have our pencils, we have our eraser, and we have a ruler. Now we're going to start. In addition, one thing I forgot to mention, if you have a little plastic cup or a glass from your house, we're gonna need that in a little bit. But first we're going to start with drawing 2 lines on either side of our ruler, okay? So just like that, and then we're going to divide it. It doesn't have to be perfectly measured, but I'm gonna use the length of my ruler. And we're going to divide it. And what we're going to practice here is various levels of shading. Now, if there's one thing I can tell you about working with pencil, it's that you need to have patience. Patience isn't always easy, but you need to have patience. So what that means is we're going to start and we're going to shade. So square 1 is our white square. And we're gonna come in and we're gonna shade. And what I need you to do is practice working as lightly as you possibly can, okay? So we're gonna work really, really lightly shading this. And our goal is that we're going to shade each one of these squares till we get quite dark by the end. So I'm gonna start with my first square. As you can see, I'm hardly pressing down on this paper. Just very, very lightly practicing that. So we're gonna pause while I keep shading, and then we'll come back when I have this entire square filled in. Okay, so now that I have this square filled in, I'm going to use my tortillion or my blending stick, and you notice that I shaded on a diagonal way, this way. Well, now I'm going to come across the square, just gently rubbing with my tortillion, and you can see that starting to blend. Now it's not a perfect blend, but if I was working on a Bristol, the blend would be even smoother. I'm not worrying about going outside the lines, and I don't want you to either, because that's not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is learning to blend and learning how much pressure we need to put on something while we're blending it. So I'm gonna blend in one direction, then I'm going to blend in the other direction. So there we go. So what that does, the blending, is it takes out some of the lines from my pencil, okay? So there we go. So that's our goal for the first one. I'm just going to erase around here, try to tidy it up a little bit. So that's our goal for our first square. So there's our first square. So now we have to get darker for our next square. So how do we do that? So we're gonna go in again. We're gonna take our pencil and we're gonna start to shade our second square. So I'm still not pressing hard. So here's the key. A lot of people think, okay, so I'm going to shade the next square and I need to press harder in order to do that. Well, that's not entirely true. What we're going to do is we're going to shade it so that it's the same or close to the same as this square that we have beside it, the lighter square. And then I'll show you how we're going to darken it. One of the reasons that you don't want to press down really hard when you're shading with pencil is that we don't want to dent and damage the paper. So we have to think of the paper as something very, very, very delicate, almost like you're drawing on a flower petal. We don't want to put a lot of pressure on it and we don't want to damage it. Now, my pencil is starting to do something that I can only be described as, it's almost like there's a grit, like some sand or something on my pencil. So what I do when that happens, and it's just something that happens in the graphite, is I just give it a good scribble on a separate piece of paper, and that just takes that little sharp sand piece out. So if your pencil isn't gliding and you feel that little grittiness in it, just scribble on a piece of scrap paper, and that will take that out. So now I'm shading my second square in. What I'm going to do when I'm done that is I'm going to blend that with the Tortillion as well. Now remember, because I shaded it in diagonally, I'm now going to blend it with my Tortillion horizontally. So I'm just rubbing it. You can rub a little harder with the Tortillion because it's not a sharp point. It's a flat space, right? So it's not a sharp point. So, this square is the same color as the first square. How are we going to remedy that? What we're going to do is we're going to shade it with the Tortillion, get everything nice and blended. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to pick up my pencil again and we're going to go over it again. So shading dark with a pencil is not about how hard you push, it's actually about layers. So you wouldn't realize when you're working in pencil that a lot of people work in pencil are actually layering the pencil on their page, but that's exactly what they're doing. I'm gonna come in nice and neat against that line there. And then I'm going to do a second shade. So what I will tell you, much like painting, the first coat that you put on, first bit of graphite that you put on with your pencil, it doesn't go on quite as smooth, but as we build layers, you'll notice it gets smoother and smoother as we go. Okay, so we'll get this second one on. You can already see it's a little bit darker here. Okay, so now what am I going to do? I'm going to go back and I'm going to blend with my Tortillion. Oh, I think we've done it. I think we have a square that's darker than the square beside it. So you can see I'm blending with my Tortillion in different directions. This will take out some of my pencil lines. It's not going to be perfect, but it takes out some of them. So now we have a square that's a little bit darker than the square before it. So I'm going to pause again, and then I'm going to fill in the next square, and then we'll come back again when we see it shaded. So this square, I have now put 2 coats of pencil on, blended twice. This is now my third coat of the pencil, and I'm blending it again. And you can see we're definitely getting there. We're definitely darker than the square before it. Now don't worry about blending too much. You can't blend too much because your Tortillion is not going to damage your paper. And there we are blended again. So now look, we've gone from white to our first shade, our second shade, to now our third shade. And you can see it's getting significantly darker. This is with 3 sets of shading with the pencil. So you can see what a difference that's already made there. So one of the questions you might ask is, why can't I blend with my fingers? Well, the reason is human fingers produce an oil on our skin. So if you're producing an oil on your skin and you blend that into your paper, you're actually damaging the paper when you do that. This way, the only thing that's touching the paper is the pencil and your tortillon or your blending stick. And then of course, every once in a while, just to keep it nice and cleaned up, a little bit of eraser, okay? So there we go. Now also what I just did there, I caution you with respect to wiping like this, a little blow or just very, very carefully. It doesn't matter right now because we're just working on blending. It will matter later when we're working on a picture. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shade the next one and then we'll come back when I'm ready to blend it. So now I've put an extra layer onto this piece. Now remember, I'm blending after every application of pencil. So here we go with this one. You can see how much darker we're getting already. You can see how that shade has gone from white to a very light gray to a medium tone, and now we're getting even darker. And I'm blending. You'll find as you go with the pencil as well that the blending with your tortillon gets easier and easier. It also helps when your tortillon starts to get a little bit dirty on the edge. And then blend a little more. Okay, so look at that. We have 4 levels of color here. So I'm going to work on the next one and I'm going to show you what it looks like when I'm finished that one. Okay, great. So I've just finished my last coat of graphite on this square, and I would tell you that I think it's about 6 coats. So 6 times I've gone over and shaded. And you might think on the last couple of pass-bys that you go over and shade that you're not actually even adding anything, but the truth is that you are. So that's our goal, is to get 5 squares where we've gradually shaded from light to dark. So practice that. I encourage you, practice that at least once, but maybe multiple times doing that. And then I want you to find a cup or something in your house that's round, and we're going to trace it. Same piece of paper because we're still just practicing. So the next thing we're going to do is practice shading within a circle, and that's not easy. So we don't have the same lines to shade from. So what I want you to do is picture an area in your circle that's going to be the lightest part in your circle. And then I want you to picture an area that's going to be the darkest part in your circle. So once you've drawn your circle, go ahead and just make that line around what you think is going to be the darkest part. Remembering your lightest part will be opposite to it. So the light is coming from here, and this is going to be your dark side over here. And then what I want you to do is I want you to start shading on that dark side of your circle, remembering the techniques that you used in shading your squares. And we're just gonna very, very lightly go over this. Very, very lightly. I'm not going to come all the way around. I'd say I come about maybe 3/4 of the way around. And I'm slowly going to build out from that. Now what you'll notice is I'm not going straight across. I'm following the shape of my circle. And that's really important when we start blending because we don't have to worry then about the fact that we've gone right around. And I'll tell you, this circle is going to look more three-dimensional. Three-dimensional meaning it's going to look like it pops off the page with us keeping the integrity of the shape of the circle as we shade. So I'm coming in here, I'm gonna shade here, just the tiniest, lightest it along this edge, okay? That's not where the bulk of our shading is going to happen. We're going to be shading out into the ball. So what I want you to do is come around this a few times and remember what I said about as we're shading with a pencil, we're being very, very light. It's almost like my pencil is barely touching the page. And if you hit a spot where your pencil feels gritty, you're going to scrub it somewhere else on a little piece of scrap paper. But here we go. So I've shaded about this much. So I'm going to stop for a moment. And now what I'm going to do is bring this tortillon around and I'm going to start to blend. Now you can see I started at the lightest spot on our circle. And I'm going to work my way around. So I'm starting at the outer edge of my tortillon, and I'm following the same pattern I followed with my pencil. I'm still keeping the integrity of this circle. Come right out to that edge, get right along that edge, and I'm going to shade it like that, okay? And then I'm going to slowly bring my tortillon in. Shade a little bit lighter areas, okay? So you can see I'm working my way in here. Oh, so something has gotten onto my paper. And quite possibly it's just a little bit of that eraser or something. But whenever you feel that, take the time to stop and take that off of your paper. We don't want it ruining the line that we're trying to blend in here. Again, just a little something on the page. I think it might be a little piece of eraser dust. So I'm coming in and I'm blending. Now this line that I made here for this light spot, that will be disappeared by the time we're done. It's just kind of a little guidance. So when you put that line on there, I want you to put it on as gently as you possibly can. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pause for a moment, and where that spot was, where it was lightest, I'm just going to erase there. So we know where that spot is right now. And again, you can either, just reach across here, take another piece of paper to take your eraser dust off, give it a nice little blow. Try to not use your finger because we don't, once it's outside of that, we can wipe with our hands. When we're taking off the inside, we just don't want to smudge what it is we're working on, okay? So I've just erased that little part right here. Kept that nice and light. Doesn't mean we're not going to continue to blend it, but the great part of lightening an area with pencil is we can go in and erase. Just gonna blend just a little bit more, soften that line. Our goal here is to not have any really hard lines. So I'm gonna keep blending, and I'm blending this way because my light spot is not in the center. It could be if you wanted it to be, but it's not going to be on this one. So I'm just gonna keep blending. Now the great thing is I have quite a bit of graphite built up now on my tortillon. So without even using my pencil, you can see I'm still getting gray tone onto my sphere. So if you haven't noticed yet, what we're actually doing is very similar to what we did on this side. We are blending from darkest to lightest. We're just doing it all within one space. We don't have those divider lines in between. We're just doing it all within one space. So once I have that done, I'm going to apply a second coat of graphite with my pencil around this outer edge, and we'll come back when I'm blending that. So I've now put another coat of pencil on with my graphite, and again, I'm going to blend and start blending in this lighter area right here. I'm gonna work my way around, starting again at my darker outer edge. Blend, blend, blend. Don't worry if it bleeds over this line. Remember, that's what we have erasers for. And we're just gonna keep blending. I wanna get this as nice and smooth as we can. Now again, if you're able to be working with Bristol paper right now, if you have that in the house, you'll notice your blending goes a little smoother than what I'm doing here because I'm not working on a graphite or on a Bristol paper. I'm working on sketch paper. That's okay. You'll still get the idea. So as you can see, I'm coming in, I'm blending again. I'm gonna start coming across my circle, my sphere, because I want to be darker here than I am over here. So here we are. We've got our second coat on, and you can really see it starting to shade. Still following a circular pattern. Still coming in, that lightness over here. Just blending, blending, blending with our tortillon. So I'm going to put another layer of pencil on, and then we'll come back and we'll blend again. So I have another layer of graphite on now, and I'm going to start blending again. So as I said at the beginning of my video, one of the things you need to learn when working with pencil is patience. So what I recommend is if you're working on this and you're feeling a little frustrated, it's not getting as blended and dark as you want it to be, as quickly as you want that to happen, then I suggest setting it aside, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then coming back to it and continuing to work on it. Really great things don't happen overnight. Okay, so here we are, we're getting there. It's getting blended. It's getting shaded on one side. So as you can see, we're really getting to a point with this where it's really starting to come together. But when you look at yours closely, what you'll notice is you'll have little bits where it's still kind of light in through the darker, more shaded areas. And while it doesn't need to be perfect, what I will tell you is the more layers of pencil you apply, the more you'll pick up and fill in all of these little areas in here where you still see bits of light. So I think for this sphere, we're going to apply one more coat of graphite, and then we're going to blend that. So I'm going to make sure that I'm working my darkest right around here. Really want to fill that in. Now once you get to about your fourth or fifth layer of pencil, you can start to push a little harder. We still don't want to dent our paper, but you can start to push just a little harder through here. Work a little more thoroughly. So I am pushing just a little bit in this area. I'm not going to apply a lot of pencil further into the ball. I'm going to apply it more to this outside edge. I really want to focus on darkening that. I don't need to darken anything over here. So there we go. There's one more layer of graphite applied. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to blend one more time with my tortillon. Again, starting to work at the darkest area and blend my way up. Find after a while that your arm gets tired from so much shading and blending. Mine gets tired. Going to come in now. So as you can see, we've really started to create that effect of light shining on this area. I want this a little bit darker through here, so I'm just going to blend just a little bit more in this area. And again, you can see I take a few more liberties in my blending. Once I have a few layers on, I'm not so worried about coming across. I don't fully follow that circular pattern once I have a good blend happening. So there you have it. We've worked with our pencils. We've learned a bit about shading, what kinds of pencils we want to use. We've learned how to make our homemade tortillon here. Now we've learned how to shade something that's round. So our next video that we will be doing an apple from start to finish. We're going to shade the apple, add some little highlights to it. And because we've worked on this circle, we'll understand how to shade something that's rounded, and we're going to give real dimension to the apple. So there you go, everyone. That's our lesson for today. Feel free to practice as much as you want. If you get tired of doing wide strips like this, you can maybe practice by doing a strip that's a little narrower, so just one line and then another, and then slowly work at shading it. Hope you enjoyed our lesson today, and we'll see you next time where we work on apples.